Welcome to episode 36 of the Student Pilot Cast, Podapalooza 2010. In this episode, you get to listen to all the aviation podcasters talk about, well, flying and other things affecting flying. That's right. It's time for Podapalooza 2010. If you missed us at Oshkosh, or if you were there but had way too many linies, this is your chance to listen to the annual gathering of the aviation podcasting world that happens every year at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh.
What does it take to be an angel? Where does the sun go when it sleeps? Is every star that shines so brightly in the sky?
Welcome to a very belated episode of the Student Pilot Cast. This is not another flight, of course, but seeing as how I'm back from Oshkosh 2010, I wanted to keep the tradition of releasing Podapalooza on the Student Pilot Cast feed. As an FYI, as a host of the Pilot Cast now, I'm releasing most of our coverage of Oshkosh and other events there and elsewhere at pilotcast.com. And we have some really great stuff from Oshkosh over there, so go check it out if you get a chance. Anything that is related to student pilots or pilot training, though, I will continue to release here in the Pilot Cast. More importantly, though, is that I'm committed to getting through my primary training in the podcast quickly, so you will be seeing some more episodes drop here in this feed, I promise. For now, though, on to Podapalooza 2010. If you need to contact me for any reason, you can reach me at bill@studentpilotcast.com or on Twitter as @BillWill, BILLWIL. As usual, thanks for listening. I loved meeting some of you and hope to meet even more of you in the future at Oshkosh and other gatherings. For now, enjoy Podapalooza 2010, which was broadcast live on EAA Radio from 7 to 9 p.m. on Friday, July 30th, 2010.
This is Podapalooza, an AirVenture forum featuring aviation podcasters from across America. These aviation fans create audio programs distributed on the internet to audiences around the world, and now they're taking the stage to meet fans, compare notes, share stories, lots of stories, and make a little music now and then. Welcome to all of you listening at home and on all the ships at sea. It's time for Podapalooza on EAA Radio.
All right, folks, welcome to Oshkosh and Podapalooza 2010. We're happy to be chatting with you once again, live and in person. We're going to real quick just kind of go down the line here and introduce ourselves. We have a group that's a lot bigger than it was last year. I think there's about twice as many aviation podcasts as we had last year, which is really cool. So let's start down here. Robert, go ahead. Name your show.
Hey, everybody. This is Robert Sigliano of the New Pilot Pod blog.
Doug Hyman with the Mile High Flyers.
Elizabeth Daniels, adjunct to the Mile High Flyers.
Mike Daniels from the Mile High Flyers.
And Nate Dewar of the Mile High Flyers.
I'm Mark Klupper from airpigs.com.
Steve Tupper, sometimes known as Stephen Forrest from Airspeed.
Bill Williams from the Pilot Cast and the Student Pilot Cast.
I'm Tiffany from the Pilot Cast.
Tiffany will be here momentarily, but I'm Kent Shook from the Pilot Cast.
And I'm Rob Mark from the Airplane Geeks.
And I'm Mike Stew from the Pilot's Journey.
And I'm Pilot Stew from the Pilot's Journey podcast.
And I'm CFI Stew from the Pilot's Journey podcast.
Does this work?
that didn't mute.
I'm Dave Hignan with Uncontrolled Airspace.
And I'm Jack Hodgson with Uncontrolled Airspace.
And I'm Jeb Burnside with Uncontrolled Airspace.
And we have something really special that happened this year. Some of us who have been doing this for a while remember the days when we were going around and talking to vendors and they would say, "You do a what?" But we got some real recognition this year in the podcasting community, and here to present an award is Michael Maya Charles, who's a longtime pilot and aviation writer and the brand new editor of Flying Magazine. So, Michael, take it away.
Thank you, guys. You know, I met Gordon Baxter back in the 70s somewhere, probably 73, 74, when we used to do the daily for the Reading show, Reading, Pennsylvania. And Gordon would be really interested in this tonight because Gordon was actually a radio announcer long before he could spell Flying Magazine. So he spent years and years and years on the air. He was the good morning voice of one of the stations down in Beaumont and Silsbee and that whole area of Texas. And I think it'd be kind of fascinating for him to look back down on us and say, well, you know what? Here these guys are doing the same thing I used to do. Only it's a little bit different twist. I got a great Gordon Baxter story that you might enjoy. When I met Gordon, he wore a pair of very simple canvas shoes. He was a very simple guy. In fact, he was very much like the guy that you read in the pages of Flying Magazine when he used to write back seat. And on his canvas shoes, on the right shoe, it said shoe. It was printed in very large block letters. On the left shoe, it said other shoe. I suppose that helped him dress in the morning. Well, I'm going to present a wonderful tribute, if you will, or award, really, to the writers who best personify the excitement and romance of grassroots aviation, which is what Gordon did so well for so many years at Flying Magazine. We're going to award it this year to three gentlemen who, of course, do uncontrolled airspace. Those three guys are Jack Hodgson, Dave Higdon, and Jeb Burnside. It was good. And I can tell that the stage crew needs a little bit of lubrication because it was supposed to show up about that time with all the applause, but we have the awards sitting here someplace. We'd be happy to get that. There they are right there. There they are right there. A little belated, but nonetheless well-deserved.
This was one of the doubts. I'd never actually seen this. I just read about it.
This is nice. This is how we do live radio, folks. So here we are to Dave Higdon for the Backseat Award. Dave, thank you. Congratulations. Carrying on the tradition of Gordon Baxter. Jeb Burnside right here. Jeb?
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, the boss, Jack Hodgson. Jack? Congratulations.
Really appreciate it.
Congratulations.
It's really all his fault.
I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
All right, thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
And also thanks to you guys for uncontrolled airspace.
Absolutely.
May not have been first, but boy, you've kept plugging every single week for a long, long time.
It's been a long road to hoe, but it makes it worthwhile, and we're just happy to kind of break new ground, if you will, for new media in this arena. We didn't get here by ourselves, and we're not going to go forward by ourselves. So thank you all also.
Can I ask a question? Did all the beer in front of you guys have anything to do with winning the award? Or?
Well, it's very, very humbling and quite an honor. And having gotten to know Gordon a little bit with us years ago on the Daily, it was just very intriguing to be recognized for participating in an opportunity to shoot off my mouth once a week. So to Flying Magazine and EAA, all I can say is, I guess you aren't going to do a recount after all, so thanks.
I mean, likewise, I never met Gordon Baxter, but I was a huge fan, and his work has always been high in my mind in all of the aviation work I've done. I loved all his stories, I believed in all his values, and I've tried to kind of carry them on a little bit in my little way, and we kind of consciously did that with the podcast as well. So this is just an extra special treat and an honor, and we're just thrilled. And huge thanks to Flying Magazine and to EAA for making this happen.
Well, Jack, thank you. I know that you do just an insane amount of work to keep Uncontrolled Airspace going. The PilotCast has been around a year longer on the calendar, but we're somewhat less than half the number of episodes that you guys have cranked out. And I know exactly how much work that is, and I have an entire crew helping me do what you do, and so I'm really impressed with the level of what you do with that.
All it really requires is being willing to do it every week, even if you have nothing to say.
Well, that's exactly right. But I'd also like to take a moment to thank Jack, both for starting us down this path 4 years ago this week, and recognize him for his foresight and all the hard work he's put in. He's put in far more hours than Dave or I have. Also like to recognize Randy Dufault, one of our regular guests. Amy Laboda was around here somewhere, another regular guest. James Winbrandt, also a regular guest, is on assignment tonight for the daily newspapers, I understand, so he couldn't be here. But and finally, just thanks to Michael Maya Charles. Used to edit him back in the old AvWeb days, and I guess things have come full circle again. So we'll shut up with all of that, and just thank you all again, and just very, very appreciative and very humbled by this whole thing.
All right, one thing I actually really enjoy on Uncontrolled Airspace is that, you know, we've had some people who have been in this business for a long time who have passed along, and Dave seems to have known all of them.
Well, I've used this line not because it's just a good line. It's true. Time spent flying is not subtracted from your lifespan. I'm actually 215.
Anyway, one of the things that I really enjoy is when you guys mention their passing, Dave, you give just the best descriptions of these people. For those of us who didn't meet Gordon Baxter, could you talk a little bit more about him?
Well, Michael's story about the writing shoe and other shoe was kind of legendary, and it was very strange to see that it was true. He turned in columns for us at what at the time was called EAA Today, handwritten in ink on a 14-inch long legal pad. There were no misspellings, there were no strike-throughs, no punctuation errors, and they read like poetry. I mean, they were just wonderful stories. So I half the time figured he was a space alien, because no human being could do that and not spend hours copying it over and over again. He was relaxed. He loved being around people. He loved hearing their stories. Great listener. Never got to fly with him. That's the biggest thing I miss about the opportunity to be around him. But he personified a lot of what you see and feel in this place, where people just love to get together. People who love flying love to get together and live it, breathe it, sleep it for a few days at a time. Gordon was one of those folks fortunate enough to get to do that on almost a weekly basis. And someday there'll be somebody else like him come along, and the comparisons will be strong, and then they'll name an award after that guy too. It's just amazing to be considered in the same vein of him at all. So, and now you've got to have something else to talk about.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we gave him and you guys all the recognition that you deserve. But what we're going to do now, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back in a few minutes live on EAA Radio. We are in the Honda Forums Plaza main stage, Pavilion 7. So if you're out there listening to us on the radio, feel free to come down and join us. We'll have some fun, and we'll talk about airplanes.
EAA Radio, heard around the pattern and around the world.
They may call it new media, but it's probably just your creep neighbor and his computers in the basement. Welcome back to Podapalooza 2010 on EAA Radio.
right, folks, once again, for those of you who are listening out there on the radio, we'd love it if you'd come down and join us on the main stage in the Honda Forums Plaza just south of the Warbirds. I guess next thing we'd like to talk about a little bit, we're going to get to airplanes, I promise, but there are a lot of new podcasts this year. Almost that whole, pretty much that whole last table is new folks. So what got you guys started?
Oh my, do I have to take that?
Yeah.
Because let's just point over there.
Well, you can't point on
over
the radio.
here and point over here, and that pretty much covers it.
Yeah,
I actually told Steve last at another event, and I said, Steve, it's all your fault.
And I immediately did this.
Yeah.
I always blame Nate.
It's viral. That's the answer for that. It's viral. You get an idea in your head that, well, if they can pull that off, I can do that. And then you go try to do it, and you go, man, this is harder than I thought it was. 3 hours editing a half an hour worth of audio, and then you email Jack, and you go, do you do this too? So that's how. By the way, I have to throw in here, we forgot to mention Ziola's not here tonight. So we have another cast member that's not here. So Ziola, if you're out there listening, I hope you are. We're sorry you couldn't be here.
Absolutely, we miss you.
Yeah, we got started pure social media over Twitter that's another thing this is Doug from the Mile High Flyers, by the way. And we still everybody still hasn't met everybody face to face. But between social media of podcasting, Twitter, Nate actually had the idea and said, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, well, yeah, sure. And that's what started it. And we're getting a little bit better every time. But listening to you guys really, UCAP and everybody else up here is what inspires us.
Absolutely. This is Robert Sigaliano from the New Pilot Pod blog. Well, I got my ticket in December 2008, and I grew up in my pilot training, listening to Airspeed and UCAP and everybody else, Pilot Cast, CFI Cast, which I hope it comes back because I love the CFI Cast. So I got my ticket, and I decided, to start talking about my experiences as a new pilot. And it's sort of a way for me to blog about and record my experiences, but also I'm hoping to get, I knew that I had doubts when I first started flying. And there were times where I didn't know whether I could continue or wanted to continue. But I got through it, and I'm glad I did. And I figured if I can talk about my experiences, maybe I can help that one pilot who may be having doubts, or maybe that one pilot who's thinking about starting, the person thinking about starting, or the pilot who's stopped and got hope maybe to get them back in the air. But it's really just talking about my experiences and chronological them, and just helping maybe get another pilot in the air.
I'm curious, Robert, did you get any help with your flying from being a podcaster? Did you get some feedback the other way with people writing in and giving you some hints on what was going on with your training?
Well, I did my podcast after I got my license. So you talk about while I was... No, but I tell you, and I said this in the forums with UCAP, and with Airspeed and with the finer points, when I was training, when I wasn't flying, that kept me going. That really kept my head in the game. That really kept my enthusiasm up. And the finer points really helped me as, the little 10-minute flight lessons. Little 10-minute flight lessons. And UCAP and Airspeed keeping me going, keeping me enthusiastic about my flying on those downtimes and when I had doubts about continuing.
As a former student pilot, listening to all the podcasts.
Yes.
Thank you for those of you who don't know.
Congratulations to Mike. He just got his private last week, right?
Yeah, on the 20th.
Congratulations.
Sometimes known as the Will Hawkins Award.
Thank you. Well, I found podcasts when I was listening to them to be very useful, in, not just the knowledge, but in the motivation. Like Robert was saying, sometimes you're looking at yourself going, I don't know that I can do this, and maybe I should, maybe I'm wasting my time. But listening to the podcast and the voices in your head, so to speak, it was just a way to keep my enthusiasm up and keep me interested. I find it very good. And I've heard that from pilots that don't even listen to podcasts since I started this, that, when you can't fly, you need to keep enthusiasm up or you'll walk away from it. And I think podcasts are very, very useful for that.
So besides having new podcasts this year, I think we've had a few changes as well. There was a new podcast last year called Pilot's Journey Podcast. And I think there's been a little bit of a change. Can you guys explain what's happened?
Well, two Stews weren't enough, so we added Mike Stew. He had to kind of change his name to make it work. But Mike Hart was one of our guests. I don't remember what episode it was, but we had great feedback from that. And neither of the Stews are that talkative, and Mike fills in that gap for us.
Whether I have something to say or not.
He must be the Kent of the Pilot's Journey podcast.
I often draw that comparison.
Now, I was just going to mention that I've heard the UCAP guys talking about Idaho Mike, which that's you, right? So you've been on their forums and everything, so...
Right, and the whole podcasting thing, I think, again, it's almost like a 12-step program.
It needs one.
You're going through whatever level, stage of training. You're out there trying to consume media. You're checking websites. You bump into the podcasts, and then you really get addicted. And I kind of blame UCAP and the whole panoply of podcasts for the fact that I ended up getting my license, or refreshing my license, then also buying an airplane, because they talked me into that, basically, or at least that's where it convinced me that I could own an aircraft, and kind of went in with my eyes open because of the advice and hearing about all the maintenance issues, and yes, I've had them. But the whole encouragement of listening to that, getting back now, I'm working on the IFR. The one thing is I started listening to Airplane Geeks, and suddenly I had no interest in the airline industry, and now I actually do. So just don't try to talk.
It's not because of me, I'll tell you that. That's the end.
Just don't try. I'm not going to try to buy an airline, okay?
But can you quote seat pitch?
But something I was going to mention that somebody mentioned before about being a listener and then somehow one day being on the show, and that's the nice thing I think about this medium is that we're all none of us are radio guys, at least I don't think so by trade, but we hear somebody and go, got a pretty good opinion there, and you're not afraid to talk about it, and we go, hey, you want to be a guest host? And they go, yeah, great. And then you get these great T-shirts. And there you go. Been there, got the T-shirt.
Also, the PilotCast had a little bit of rebirth this year as well, and so there are a couple of new.
By the way, folks, that is Steve Tupper's fault. So
no question about it. So,
I also have to thank Pilot Stu here from the Pilot's Journey podcast. Actually edits our podcast as well, and that takes just a huge load off, and we would not have been able to come back without his work too. So big thanks to Stu.
He is definitely a master of audio, no question about it. So Tiffany is out in the audience here. Tiffany is one of the new hosts, and she's going to be roving around here in a minute. And of course, I produced the Student Pilot podcast and am now one of the hosts of the PilotCast as well, and I'm honored to be. So, Tiffany, do you have anybody out there that has any questions?
Any questions? Anybody want to be on the show?
I'm
anybody who wants to say something real quick about what we do, and we want to move on to airplanes then, but we've always gotten some good feedback when we do this as to if you guys think we should do something a little different or something you'd like to see, and we actually have some stuff that we heard about last year that I'm still working on bringing out, but let's hear your suggestions.
Well, Tiffany, I have to say, other than you, I don't see a whole lot of females up there. We've got this young lady. But come on, Kent, what's up?
Hey, I brought Tiffany onto the PilotCast as the first regular female crew member of a podcast. So
I think he's maybe talking about a sex change for you.
And moving on. Anybody else?
Right.
That's why a lot of the airspeed episodes are audio only.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually was talking to one of our friends who's getting into aerobatics, and she said, "Oh, I'm so excited! I'm going to be on EA Live the other night." Candy, you're the fifth person listening, but she got on the show and she had a blast and loved it. And since she's doing acro, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out to Uncontrolled Airspace, who is not here tonight. That you should definitely. Or, no, I'm sorry. Is it Inverted Cast? What's the acro one?
Inverted Cast, yeah.
Inverted Cast. I think it's Mark and those guys that they should get in touch with Candy, and they can do that through getting in touch with me. Because we need more girls. Just.
Well, and we also have Ziola. She's not here tonight, so. Yep.
I'm sort of filling in a little bit for Ziola. She couldn't be here, but one of the nice things I find, being the wife of a newly minted pilot who does plan to get her pilot's license as well, but being very new to the whole aviation experience, is that it's really nice with our podcast that Ziola is there. She's such an accomplished pilot, and she's also so accomplished in so many other ways, and she really adds a nice flavor and balance and brings a whole other perspective to the whole thing. So it's really nice coming from my perspective, being new and sort of approaching it as someone who is just beginning to embrace all of this. So I agree, we need a lot more women, and go women, go girls,
yeah.
Go Linda Bates.
And more Hawaiians.
What's that?
And more Hawaiians.
Yes, more Hawaiians, exactly.
Are there any other questions out here?
All right.
You, sir.
Nah, we're do you have a question?
We might have a question for you.
He's an airline guy.
He looks like Tiffany's picking
We're going to
on
put you on the
Question
spot
why
here.
we think he has a question.
What's your name?
I'm Brian Lusk, and I'm with Southwest Airlines, and I'm in the communications department, and I also manage our corporate blog, and that's about Southwest.
Oh, wow. Great.
And
Since we're here, and I don't happen to have a computer in front of me, do you have anything you'd like to let us know about?
Well, we're really excited. This is our first year to participate in AirVenture, and tomorrow we'll have one of our 737s wearing a special AirVenture decal that will be in Aeroshell Square. It's arriving at 8 a.m. and it'll be here till 1800, and we'll have some of our pilots, our RNP experts will be there, so stop by and they'll explain our procedures, and we hope everyone will come by and talk to our employees. We're really excited, and we'll also be giving away a trip to Tampa for everyone that tours our airplane. They'll get a souvenir boarding card and with a little stub, and we'll have a drawing for a vacation in Tampa.
Oh, that's great. When's the plane going to leave?
It'll leave at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Okay, very cool. And that's going to be in Aeroshell Square?
Yeah, it'll be in Aeroshell Square.
Yeah, see, Brian, when you start using those big numbers like 1,800, you're really kind of throwing us. So
6 p.m.
6 p.m. And one nice thing I have to tell you, that having worked with Brian before on some other things, I've got a really cool blow-up Southwest Airlines hat. It's a plastic 737.
Why are you not wearing that right now?
And I didn't bring it.
This may be the only appropriate place that you could wear that
hat. That's what I was thinking.
And I've got good news for you. The bin is full of them.
Oh, cool. All right. We'll have those on tomorrow.
That's great.
All right, well, we're going to take another quick break here, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to ask Dave Higdon if he found anything he won't fly yet. So come on down to Pavilion number 7 here in the Honda Forums Plaza, and continue listening on EA Radio if you can't join us in person, and we'll be right back.
So what do you reckon, Steve? Pretty cunning idea of mine to fly a hot air balloon over to Oshkosh, yeah?
Absolutely, mate. Whereabouts are we right now?
I think we're about a third of the way there, mate. We're well and truly over the Pacific. We're getting a good breeze here. I think we've got just the right altitude. Should get us there to Oshkosh in a couple of days, mate.
Awesome. I can't wait to get there. It was for 2010, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll get there. Come on, man. Balloons are cool. It's the best way to fly. Anyhow, okay, so that's that tank sort of running low. I better get ready to... Steve, where are all the other tanks gone?
Tanks? What tanks?
the big cylindrical things full of LPG that we burn to keep the balloon in the air. That whole compartment of this basket should be full of them.
I didn't think we needed them. I chucked them out.
Mate, all I can see in here is a lunch bag and a didgeridoo.
I need more room for my lunch.
Oh, no. This thing can't fly without any more gas. I've drained all the gas in the tanks in this compartment. Mate, we've got a bit of a problem here.
You mean we're not going to make it this year?
Hey, we may not be able to make it ever at this rate.
Hang on, mate. You've got a mobile phone, haven't you? Give it to me and I'll call Steve Tupper.
Yeah, here you go, mate. It's a sat phone. It's got coverage.
Beautiful.
It's time for airspeed. I'm Stephen Forrest.
Steve, it's us. We're not going to be able to make it. Quick, record this and play it for everyone.
Cue the iPod. It's been a big 12 months down here in Australia for Plane Crazy Down Under. Grant, what have we been up to since the last Oshkosh?
Oh, mate, drinking lots of beer, hanging out, watching planes, doing some more flying. Oh, the important stuff. Oh, yeah, we've interviewed some really cool people.
Over the last 12 months, Plane Crazy Down Under has developed and had some of the biggest guests in the Australia-Pacific region. Red Bull Air Racer, Matt Hall.
Yeah, for sure. I always enjoy talking to you guys, and as I said last time, it's a great concept, great product, and you're easy to talk to.
And Nigel Lamb.
That's always the aim. I mean, not just to get on the podium, but just to get up as high as you can.
And Hannah Sark.
Oh, thank you very much, guys. And as I said, I think it's really cool if we got guys like you guys going more into details, treating that like a sport, and I think that helps all of us. So thanks a lot. Great job from your side.
Yeah, they're all pretty happy with the ability to chat with the aviation podcasters and really get the information across that they just can't tell people when they talk to the news agencies.
We've also had legendary Australian pilots like Australia's first female airline pilot, Deborah Laurie.
But it started back in 1978 when I first applied to ANSET and also TAA, as it was known in those days.
We've also had some great Australian pilots who went on some amazing adventures. There was Owen Zupp, who flew a Jabiru, one of Australia's best little aircraft, right round the country, visiting various historical sites in the process and raising money for the Royal Flying Doctors Service.
G'day guys, how are you?
Along with Ken Evers and Tim Price, who recently flew a Gippsland Aeronautics Airvan right around the world.
I got my pilot's licence up in New Guinea. Dad had a pilot's licence, so he taught me where to spend money as soon as I started earning some, and sort of went from there. And then I finally got a love for it and ended up getting a commercial and heading up to New Guinea and flew up there for a few years.
That was pretty impressive.
With regular news and views on the Australia-Pacific aviation industry, with regular segments including history with David Vanderhoof.
This is David Vanderhoof, the Plane Crazy Down Under historian. I'm here with Craig Brookhouse. Craig is the flight engineer of Canadian Warbird Heritage's Lancaster.
And the view from the lounge with Anthony Simmons, who flies a lot but isn't a pilot.
Statistically, I'm more likely to die from an accident with a cow than one with an aeroplane.
And let's not forget our regular air traffic control segment with Ben Ippolito.
My name's Ben, and I'm an air traffic controller at the Honorary Control Centre here in Melbourne, Australia.
And even this bloke.
Hey, this is Rob Mark from jetwine.com.
Plane Crazy Down Under is also an active participant in the growing worldwide aviation podcast community, along with our regular Australia Desk Report on the Airplane Geeks podcast.
And our soon-to-be appearing Flying in Australia segment coming up on Flight Time Radio with Milford and Charlie.
With 37 episodes completed, Plane Crazy Down Under has quickly established itself as the region's premier aviation podcast. Stop by for a visit at planecrazydownunder.com, and remember,
it's what's down under that counts. Oh, mate, I'm really bummed about this. I really wanted to be there this year.
Oh, well, maybe in 2011.
Yeah, maybe, but Steve, you know how we like to say it's what's down under that counts?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, well, try not to look down because we're going to be down under the water real soon now, mate.
Oh, boy.
The voices in your head are coming together and organizing. This cannot be good. It's Podapalooza on EAA Radio.
I would really like to thank Steve and Grant from the Plane Crazy Down Under podcast for saying hi to us up here, and we really hope they can make it here in person next year.
And if I can mention something, the Plane Crazy guys, do some work with Airplane Geeks every week. They do a nice segment for us, and they're fairly talented guys. I mean, if you like that. I mean, it's not that we're feeling, threatened by them or anything like that. I don't think. But anyway, we're all taking up a fund. We're taking a collection up, so if anyone wants to throw into the kitty, I'll have my hat out, and I'll be sure that they get the money to come up. So just put it right up here. Steve, Grant? Okay.
Yeah, they're breaking the rules. We told them last year when we played their little intro that anybody who joins us remotely, even by recording like that, has to be here the next year. So now they have to be here at least the next 2 years, I think.
Exactly.
So, of course, now the question is on everybody's mind. Has Dave Higdon found anything he won't fly yet?
You mean here this week? Not yet.
Have you found anything that you haven't flown yet?
Way too much to list, yeah. I flew a single-seat Part 103 hot air balloon years ago, but have not yet done the multi-helium routine. But I have this fear of clowns that comes back every time I see those kind of balloons. So.
Well, let's go with some of the people who have not been here before. Who on stage has not been to AirVenture before? Wow, yeah. So they're not only new to podcasting, they're new to Oshkosh. Does your being here have anything to do with the podcast? Or did you all just randomly decide to show up this year?
I'll answer that. I've actually been to Oshkosh. I just haven't been to AirVenture. I was here in January, and then I was here over a year ago in June, and actually hired a instructor in a Cessna over here so I could do some pattern work and have it in my logbook that I took off and landed at Kosh.
Wait a minute, you mean this place exists the rest of the year?
It does. And ironically enough, I do a lot of business where I fly in and out of Milwaukee throughout the year. So I have to drive up here once in a while, in and out of Appleton. I've been an aviation nut the majority of my life. I get it from my father, and Oshkosh is the place to go if you're an aviation nut. So I've been wanting to go, and this year we just had to do it, especially after we pulled Sun and Fun off for the first time, too. Oh, sorry, I probably shouldn't say that here.
I've got a question for you. So since most of us don't ever fly here when it's AirVenture's not going on, when you're doing pattern work, do you rock your wings?
No. But taking off with a lake under is a little new for me since I live in Las Vegas, and although we have a big lake there, I don't fly near it that often.
All right, so for those of you who have not been here before, what's the coolest thing you saw this week?
The coolest thing? You know what? First time here, I'm so overwhelmed. It's just everything. The coolest thing I've seen is everything. I think what surprised me the most is the amount of variety of the planes. You know, from LSAs to the C5 Galaxy and everything in between. It's just amazing. I didn't realize there was so many makes and models of airplanes. It's amazing. And I did come here specifically for Podapalooza, not for the airplanes.
Wow, glad to hear it. It actually reminds me of a couple years ago, Bill had not been to Oshkosh before, and Troy Wistman, who is now our announcer for the Pilot Cast, it was his first time here also. And I flew down to Milwaukee in the 182 to pick both of them up, Bill on Tuesday and then Troy on Friday. So I had been here since Sunday, and of course I had been at AirVenture before, and Bill had been here since Tuesday, so it was at least a 3-day veteran. And well, we fly in, and of course, there's airplanes everywhere up there, but they're all Cessnas, and we get the plane parked, and we're starting to, go to the bus stop to wait for the bus to come around to come down into the show, and Troy's like, oh, look, a P-51, and, Bill and I are just like, yeah, whatever. Because, that's a good day at any other airport or any other time of the year, but, it is very overwhelming how much stuff is here, so.
By the way, I don't think it gets better. This is my third year. I don't know about the guys that have been here for many, many more years, like Mark. But it's overwhelming every year. So.
Yeah, well, one of the things I do, I put up a post now, both this last year and this year, that this year it was Oshkosh 10 is going to be the best Oshkosh ever. And the reason for that is the best Oshkosh ever is the one you're at right now. And that's really true, I think, anyway. The experience is just unbelievable. This is my 34th year, at least that's what I've been saying. I think that's accurate. So I was here the first year in 1970 as a 9-year-old kid. So, and it's just an amazing place. It really is.
I can't tell you the coolest thing I've seen, but I can tell you the coolest thing I've done so far, which is fulfilling a lifelong dream to try welding. So I attended the welding workshop today, and I welded for the first time. It was fantastic. So here,
better than any of the welds I've ever done. So nice.
I've got a gift.
That's a very cool. What is that exactly?
Well, you know they're building a plane, and I think this might be an aileron or
it's awesome.
It could be a seat. I'm not sure which.
I think even Higdon would fly that.
Very cool. So,
it could be a wheel chuck.
Little airplane.
It is a very nice wheel chuck.
It's got a handle to pull it away.
I had a comment about the coolest thing I've seen as a new person in Oshkosh, and it wasn't a thing. It was a size. And Doug kind of pointed it out yesterday or so. I've had some various problems getting in and out of the airfield, driving around Wisconsin way too much. We learned a lesson on not to do that. Kent and Doug were chatting last night, and Kent looks at me and he goes, "You realize that Camp Scholler starts at the tree line there, and they have street signs?" And I said, "Yeah, I know they got street signs. I understand. I got the map, I know what's going on." He goes, "You realize it goes to 96th Street before you get to the next road?" And the same thing everywhere you go on the field. It's like one little piece of Oshkosh is an entire air show back home. One little piece of it. And so that's just the size. Completely overwhelming.
Actually, I got a really good appreciation for the size of the show last year. When you're up flying an airplane, it kind of seems, it's not that big. You can see the whole thing, right? And when you're on the ground, of course, you can't hardly see any of it. But I got to go up in the control tower last year. And that's at just the right level. And, you're low, but you're not having to fly an airplane. And so you can just kind of pause and look around and just say, wow. I mean, it's a city, and it's heaven. Any other new people here that saw something really cool?
Well, Ken, it's not my first year, it's my second year, but I would say what surprised me this year is not what I saw, but it's who I saw, and being able to interview all the foundations that we did with the Lightspeed Aviation Foundation, and getting to know people like Lynn from Build a Plane and Bruce Wolf from Brigade Air and the 99s, and getting to hear more about what all of these great organizations are doing. I think that really put it into perspective for me of how important this is and how amazing this community is. And it's really only at Oshkosh that you can get all those groups together. I mean, you've got Sun and Fun, but not all of them are there. And here we had so many different groups coming together and talking about all the amazing things they're doing. And then, afterwards we stopped by Build a Plane, and we saw Brigade Air, who is kind of like Young Eagles, but camps, and they've got the kids flying all the time. Talking to Build a Plane, who brings the planes in and has the kids build them. So you've got one group who's building pilots and another group who's growing AMPs. And I watched them get together and talk about how they could kind of form a bond and start working as a team. And it's amazing to see what Oshkosh can do as far as building our community. And the airplanes are cool too. So.
Definitely.
Well, it's my first time here at Oshkosh, and I'm going to have to give a quick shout out to Mike Hart, who paid my way up to Salt Lake City and picked me up in his 182, and we flew over from Salt Lake City to Oshkosh in that, what was it, 12 hours?
Yeah, 12.3, 12.4, depending on how you measure it.
Great adventure, dodging thunderstorms and mountains, and making it in and almost marginal VFR, and
2 hours of actual.
2 hours of actual. And so I don't know if there's any one thing I can say was my favorite here, but I'm just trying to enjoy the overall experience of Oshkosh, the flying in, rocking your wings over Fisk, pitching the tent, getting to meet the people, and meeting all you guys for the first time too, because I felt I've known all of you for so long on Twitter, and I know all of you by your Twitter names. I can't really recite all of your actual names yet, but hopefully that'll be the time I leave. And actually meeting the UCAP guy the first time too, you're actually, I can contribute you, or I guess Mike Hart said it best at just blame UCAP, because you're the guys, the reason why I got into podcasting in the first place, and I'm really glad to meet you guys for the first time, and shared those beers with you the other night.
We'll have a waiver for you to sign a little bit later on. So.
Right. You can send the money to cfistew@gmail.com, and my PayPal is all there too. So.
I think for me, one of the big things, in fact, actually the highlight was flying here. Oshkosh is about aviation is about flying, and the actual flying to get here was one of the big highlights. It was also really cool. This was the first time to actually meet both of the other Stews and put faces with the people who I've been podcasting with. And so that was kind of an interesting thing.
Now let me tell you a little something about Mike Hart here. When I said camping and pitching a tent by the aircraft, that's a very loose relative term with Mike. I think he brought an entire kitchen with him, including the sink. There is an actual sink. And you
gotta love 182s.
Mi-Fis.
Roger that.
Yeah. And, computer servers and his laptops out and Mi-Fi going and really roughing it out there with his generators and cell phone chargers and his iPad and iPhone and Apple MacBook all going at once right under the wing of the aircraft.
That's why the rest of us can't get on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now blame Mike.
I am a hotspot.
Mike, is this your first Oshkosh?
Yeah, this is the first time here. So, one of the things that was really cool was the fact that, again, what made it possible was watching Kent's video from what that you described earlier. Was it demystified? It's like, I'd heard about the Fisk approach and it just sounded, ungodly. Then seeing it, it's like, I can do that. It looked much more reasonable, but still intimidating. And then, of course, UCAP's always going on about read the NOTAM. And I think more than reading the NOTAM, it's behaving the NOTAM. It's doing, and of course, we got the pass because the weather this year, all the general aviation was shut down. So a 1960 airplane got vintage camping, and that was open, and so nobody else could get in but us. So it was kind of. And when I was at Sun and Fun a couple of years back, it was muddy and rainy. So I'm thinking maybe I'm the kiss of death when it comes to. So maybe I shouldn't be coming to Oshkosh. I'm a rain god.
Maybe next year leave the kitchen sink at home and bring some of that bark with you that they've been spreading on.
Exactly. It could be my fault. But I think the final thing that was really fun was just the other night, the one after at the UCAP meetup, just sitting outside the fence. The planes are taken off. You're there with a bunch of pilots, and you get to enjoy the discussion. Everybody whipping their heads around, what's that? And then just hangar talking in between planes. That was the highlight for me.
All right, well, we're going to be doing some more hangar talk here in just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back on EAA Radio, and once again, we are live here in the Honda Forums Plaza on the main stage. Come down and join us if you're here in Oshkosh.
It's a podcast. No. It's a broadcast. No. It's streaming on the web. No. It's all three. You're listening to Podapalooza on EAA Radio.
All right, we're back, folks. Thanks for joining us. We are here live on EAA Radio as well as at Forum 7. And now, I was just kind of curious. I noticed before we started, there was a line of about a dozen beers sitting in front of the UCAP guys, and they're all gone.
Not quite all.
No, it wasn't a dozen.
I think Jack's hitting on my wife. We should learn from the Iraqis.
Well, I noticed Dave just gave one away, but wow, I'm impressed, guys.
What about us?
I guess what we ought to do is we ought to let you talk a little bit.
No. One of our listeners posted a description of our podcast on the forum yesterday or today or something like that. What he described it as he said it was a beer podcast with an aviation problem.
And what's scary is that this lovely young student pilot is about 15, so he's learning very quickly.
Wow. All right.
You were talking about things we've seen. And you were asking the first timers, and that's great. That's really interesting to hear.
I was just going to say, let's move on to you guys.
I'm in the middle of the pack. I'm very proud to say this is my 20th consecutive Oshkosh. Yeah. And And I'm incredibly proud of that until I bump into somebody who's been like 75 years, you know. No, all kidding aside, there are all kinds of people you run across here who have been here 30, 40 years. It's just not unusual at all. But I've been here 20. I'm in the middle of the pack, and I still find things that are just astounding, all right? And I just want to call attention to two things. First of all, 21 DC-3s. I mean, who was here the other day when these things flew overhead?
That was amazing.
It was astounding. And what was even more astounding than seeing them fly overhead was when they landed, all right? Because they headed out and they were in this loose formation overhead, and then they went way down over the lake, and they must have, got into trail, and they started landing on 1-8, and they just came in one after another, after another, after another, and you just think, okay, that must be all. Nope, there's 5 more on final. It was a pretty amazing moment. And the 21 that we saw, someone pointed out to me that the 21 we saw fly over were just some of them, because there were already 4 on the ground, and there were 3 that were prepping to drop the jumpers for the air show. And it's very, very cool to see that many of a particular type, of a classic type here. So that was very cool. The other thing that was really cool, and this is kind of a very fleeting thing, but if you keep your eyes open, you see these from time to time. Jeb and I had the occasion to do something the other night that we haven't done at Oshkosh in a long time, and that is that we went out after hours, after everything had quieted down, and we just went wandering along the flight line, all right, at sunset and a little bit beyond sunset. And we're just wandering around looking at the airplanes. It's a very quiet time. It's beautiful. This year it's a little buggy, all right, there's a little bit, the mosquitoes are a thing, but it's worth it, because we were wandering around looking at all these airplanes, and so we'd had this great evening looking at all these airplanes, and we said, okay, it's time to head back, to where we were staying. And so we were crossing back across the flight line, and we were going past Aeroshell Square. And we had intended to walk right past, go right past Aeroshell Square, but we stopped and we realized that there was just this incredible thing in Aeroshell Square. There was a variety of airplanes that night. This is like two nights ago, I think. There was a variety of airplanes in Aeroshell Square that was just unprecedented. I mean, there was a 737. There were like 3 or 4 DC-3s. There were 2 B-17s. All right. There was an AWACS. There was that heavy lift helicopter. There was an F-18. There was a DC-7. It was just astounding, the variety of airplanes. Classic, wonderful old and new airplanes. And man, it's kind of cliche, but you don't see that anywhere else.
No, you really don't. And that's what I love about coming to Oshkosh is every year you get to see something that you've never seen before, generally several somethings you've never seen before. One of my favorite things that I've ever seen here was, it was Sunday a couple of years ago, and I saw aluminum overcast, probably way up at 8,000 or 10,000 feet, circling around under escort by 10 P-51s. And that just blew me away. And that's the kind of stuff I'd absolutely love to see here. So, Jeb, what have you seen?
The airplanes, of course, are one of the main attractions for one of the main reasons I come to it. I remember it's been probably 10 years or so, and I can't claim to 20 years. I have maybe 15 or so under my belt here, not all of them consecutive, but I remember about 10 years ago being out on the North 40, dusk and going into the evening, sitting under the wing of a Twin Beach, and 6 or 8 of us just kind of sitting around in a semicircle. And the bugs weren't a problem. We had a few beers, I believe. I don't remember all that well. But it was the people. It was the conversation. It was the retelling and retelling of perhaps tall tales, but just sharing that camaraderie. That to me is really the essence of Oshkosh, and that's one of the reasons. That's the main reason I come here every year. The airplanes are great. Walking around, kicking tires. Don't want to ever minimize that. But right up there at the top of the list is getting together with, of course, these two ne'er-do-wells, meeting Mike Hart. Mike and I had corresponded. Mike had even read an article or two for aviation safety, and getting back and seeing Kent and Steve and everybody else here. That's really the value. Something we only really do once a year. And if we're not here, we're missed. So for me, that's Oshkosh, and that's the real reason to be here.
Amen.
Yep. Definitely.
So, Jeb, you have the Debbie here?
Yeah, the Debbie and I made it in close formation, all at the same time. She's parked over at Weeks. I forget where I am right now. The other side of the field. Don't even go there. Yeah, no, the other side of the field. Yeah, she's in good shape, and hopefully we'll both get home in the same way we got here.
She's on tarmac, though, right?
Well, she was. She's on high ground now, but she was on pavement for a couple of days, actually, after I parked her. Got very lucky, and has more to do with the weather and the lack of airplanes competing for space over there than any status or magical power that I have.
Okay, how many of us, including the audience here, who does have an airplane here on the field this week? Who was trying to get onto the field this week and had to leave their airplane somewhere else?
Who's at Appleton or Fond du Lac or something like that, yeah.
Well, I actually was planning on flying in here Sunday, and things were closed, and I had an excellent opportunity. I got to fly a Hawker 800 on Monday.
Here we go.
So, here we go. I delayed. I figured Oshkosh would wait for a day, but then I looked on the internet, and they said, hey, camping's open, and flew across the lake, tuned in the ATIS, and it was closed. So I ended up just flying home, but... how about in the audience who was going to have an airplane here and had to do something else? Yeah, that's.
We were talking a little bit about things you've seen here, and one of the stranger, eerier things earlier, a week or so ago, was what you didn't see here, which was airplanes. Yeah. There were no tents in the North 40 for days, and then tents showed up, but there were tents and no airplanes. And the whole thing felt out of kilter. And we were here for some of the posterior weather that made the ground so wet that they wouldn't support aircraft. But a lot of what we were seeing was also because of weather elsewhere, making Jeb's track on FlightAware look like wrong way Corrigan. I'm going to Maine, so let's go by way of Dubuque.
Nice job,
trying to take an end run around weather. And there was never a doubt, though, that this thing would reconstitute and collect, and people started showing up and populating the parking lots with their RVs, and there were hundreds of campers at Fond du Lac, and finally they were able to let some folks in and put them on concrete here. That's when we got the tents. And as weird and as strange as that felt, there was never a moment when you couldn't believe that it was going to happen just like it's supposed to before it was all over.
For the guys who have been here 20 times or more, have you ever seen weather like this that has caused such a commotion?
This is my, I think, 26th. And my first came here in 81. And I have seen many instances where the storm would leave parts of the grounds ponded that would be gone in a few hours. A couple of instances where the weather that came through was thick enough and hard enough to move airplanes against the tie-downs and topple tents and things like that. But they were always these brief, impulsive, high-energy systems that came through and went away. And this freight train of stuff that came through was beyond anything that I've ever seen.
So in 20 years, I just wanted to know that so I can be ready in 20 years to say I haven't seen anything like this since 2010.
Well, to put it in flooding terms, I think what we've had here is a 100-year air show.
Well, Rob Mark has been saying how many you've been here, but you haven't said, because I know you're really, really old. So
I'm not as old. I'm not as old as Jack. Actually, we were trying to take a poll. I remember when they were at Rockford, and that's pretty old. So, did you go to any ones at Rockford when they were there?
What was the question?
Did you go to Rockford?
No, I missed out on Rockford. My first show was 81. It came here in 70 from Rockford. But when my work first started bringing me up here, there was no headquarters here. There was no museum. There was no Pioneer Airport or the hangars or the Eagle hangar. They did have the Weeks hangar, where they restored it and worked on some of their collection. But most of the collection was down the road at Hales Corners.
That's
exactly.
right, yeah.
And I first came here in 81. And I have seen many instances where the storm would leave parts of the grounds ponded that would be gone in a few hours. A couple of instances where the weather that came through was thick enough and hard enough to move airplanes against the tie-downs and topple tents and things like that. But they were always these brief, impulsive, high-energy systems that came through and went away. And this freight train of stuff that came through was beyond anything that I've ever seen.
So in 20 years, I just wanted to know that so I can be ready in 20 years to say I haven't seen anything like this since 2010.
Well, to put it in flooding terms, I think what we've had here is a 100-year air show.
Well, Rob Mark has been saying how many you've been here, but you haven't said, because I know you're really, really old. So
I'm not as old. I'm not as old as Jack. Actually, we were trying to take a poll. I remember when they were at Rockford, and that's pretty old. So, did you go to any ones at Rockford when they were there?
What was the question?
Did you go to Rockford?
No, I missed out on Rockford. My first show was 81. It came here in 70 from Rockford. But when my work first started bringing me up here, there was no headquarters here. There was no museum. There was no Pioneer Airport or the hangars or the Eagle hangar. They did have the Weeks hangar, where they restored it and worked on some of their collection. But most of the collection was down the road at Hales Corners.
That's
exactly.
right, yeah.
And that didn't start moving up here until the late 80s. And then it just transformed the place.
Yeah, I think he's definitely older than me. I don't think there's any doubt. Yeah. Thanks for that, Mike. Over to you.
You guys are actually making me feel sorry for Dave Higdon. It's like, I just want to point out, to your point, Paul Poberezny himself, the guy who started this whole thing, has been quoted this week as saying he never saw weather this bad. Yeah. I mean, this is a legendary week. I mean, we will talk about this Oshkosh for years and years to come, and you guys were here.
In actuality, it wasn't the weather during the week that was so bad. It was the weather in the preceding 2 or 3 weeks that just dumped rain and more rain on the soil and just to the point that it got soaked. I've seen a lot of windstorms and thunderstorms come through here, and everybody kind of hunkers down under the wing or in the tent or in a storefront or something like that until it blows over, and it does blow over. They go back out, they repitch the tent, and we move on.
Has anybody else seen the EAA T-shirts, the H2O10 T-shirts?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, they were they made a bunch of different shirts. I think there's like 4 or 5 different. Dave, you're the one that popularized Sploshkosh, and I think there's a shirt that says Sploshkosh. And
what was the other one? Mud Venture. And some of this was some of these terms were being batted around 4 days before the show opened because it was already that wet here. Yeah. So we didn't invent it. We just helped make sure that it got out front.
Well, and if anyone's been getting rained on out there, I haven't seen what's been going on outside, but it was raining a little earlier. Come on down to Pavilion 7. We're warm and dry, and we have free bug spray. If you're out there on the grounds getting eaten, come on down, see us live. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
You've heard them. You might have listened to them. Perhaps you've even sought them out. And now is your chance to meet the voices in your head. Welcome back to Podapalooza on EAA Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back to Podapalooza 2010. We are live at Oshkosh. We're on EAA Radio. Come on down to Pavilion 7, and you can tell us your weather story, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk to a couple audience members now. I want to hear a couple more things that went on, and we'll see if we can get some good stories out of this weather thing. So, Tiff, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, we're over here with Jim. He's got a Skyline that he's been flying, or should I say, hoping to fly. So I'm going to turn this over to him, and he's going to tell his wet story.
Yeah.
So I flew out here from Philadelphia, third time in a row, and of course the goal is to try to get in here. That didn't work because the campground, the North 40 wasn't open for general aviation aircraft at the time, and somebody said I should try to go under vintage. I'm not sure who I would fool with a 2002 Skyline on that point. So I figured I'd go over to Fond du Lac. So I drove over to Fond du Lac, I checked with them. Do you have room? Oh, yeah, we have room. Will you have room 2 hours from now? Oh, yeah, we'll have room. Okay. I went down to Milwaukee, got the plane, closed.
So you got kicked out of Fond du Lac as well.
Yep. Went up to Appleton. They have room. It's a 20-minute bus ride from the field where they're parking planes all the way back to the terminal. Not fun. That's my story. I'm glad to be here, however.
20 minutes from on the field at Appleton to the terminal at Appleton?
Because they were so full that they're parking planes on the far side of the airport, and the buses can't cross the runway, so they have to drive around the airport. It was see what people do to get to Oshkosh? It's at Appleton.
Well, I heard one good piece. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, when I listened to the ATIS when I was trying to get in here the other night and heard that everything was closed, I decided I was going to fly over Oshkosh anyway and at least give the plane a look at the show. And I looked down at the North 40 and I saw all the airplanes crammed up against the ramp over by Orion, and I saw all the tents all the way down by the Warbirds, and then people were complaining about on Twitter about having to ride a bus from their airplane to their tent. So that's kind of why I decided I was just going to leave the airplane at home and drive up here, and I'm close enough that I have the luxury of being able to do that. But is there anyone else out there who had to leave their plane behind? All right, Tiffany's going to come over to you there.
What's your name?
My name's Sam. Actually, it wasn't an airplane. I'm a local, and I decided so for the second year of my 21 years here at Oshkosh to camp. And so we attempted to pull the camper out of the backyard, and it immediately sank up to its axles. So I scrambled, and the last minute I drove 3.5 hours further north to get a co-worker's camper and then drive it back down to Oshkosh. I lived 20 minutes away, but the round trip for me was about 8 hours.
That's dedication.
I love it. That's a good sacrifice to be on the field, isn't it? And what do you think about being on the field? I mean, I think that it's a completely different experience to be on the field, and I think everybody ought to do it. So
I totally agree. Like I said, I've been coming to Oshkosh for 21 years. I've been volunteering with EAA Video for 15 years. And it's a completely different feel to actually be camping in Camp Scholler. Or Lake Scholler, and I don't know. It's almost undescribable. The sense of community is amazing. You really get to meet, people from all over. My neighbor last year was, from Alabama. This year, we had some people from Ontario. We have, people from Pennsylvania. It's all over the place, right next to us, and it's really cool to see. I would recommend it to anybody, either camping on the North 40 or camping in Camp Scholler, wherever you can. Definitely try to do it. It's changed my attitude towards the AA a lot.
Can we rent your house next year and you can have our campsite?
We might be able to arrange something, yeah.
Woo! Pilot Cast House.
Well,
just so that people listening out in the rest of the world don't get the wrong idea, a friend of mine with the FAA confirmed to me this morning that they are not going to add personal flotation devices and life raft equipment to the NOTAM for next year. So.
Just to put it in perspective a little bit, I found out how much rain this area got over the last couple of weeks, and it actually doubled the amount of rain in my hometown for the last year. So it's a lot of water.
For me, it's like the last 10
Yeah, and it started getting wet and soaked here 2 weeks before the normal arrival cycle. That's why those last couple of waves of storms worked on it.
It's gotten wet here all spring and summer. It's been an extremely wet spring and summer, and I think it was really basically July. The record was trivial compared to the amount of rain we actually got through the month of July. It was amazing.
It's actually put a dent in sunscreen sales in Wisconsin.
Well, Oshkosh actually was not the only field that was closed because of the rain. Mitchell International in Milwaukee had to be closed because it got flooded. So it's definitely been a very, very wet year here in Wisconsin.
Well, that's one of the things that was listening. Planning a trip from Idaho, knowing it was going to be a long trip, a lot of weather between here and there. Listening to the updates on the podcast is really helpful, and also following various tweets. I saw Nate, you were already here, and you were saying you had plywood, and it's like, that's a good idea. Then I heard UCAP saying, things to bring to Oshkosh, all the different items, and so that one was one where I was, again, the value of new media was I was a lot more prepared. I wasn't prepared for mosquitoes that are squawking 1,200 though.
No, you see what happened with the mosquitoes is our State Department of Aeronautics realized that if they forced them to have N numbers, that they could charge registration fees.
Hell on TCAS though.
They're mean.
Jack, aren't you supposed to be putting a stop to all this weather talk or something?
Say it again, I'm sorry?
Aren't you supposed to be putting a stop to all this weather talk?
No, man, I'm off duty.
You seem content.
No. By the way, anybody's following Twitter, our friends from Down Under said hi on Twitter. Hi,
right. Are they listening?
They're listening on the stream. Yeah.
Can you read it for us? What did it say?
Oh, it just says hi. It just says, where'd it go? It says, woohoo, PCD, that's their name, PCDU on Twitter. Say hi from Down Under. It's all, so. Yeah.
Grant, Steven, how you doing? Make sure that the orangutan holds the antenna properly this time, so you can get the stream.
And the only thing we're missing here is a bottle is so.
Couple.
All right, and we're going to once again take a quick break. You're listening to Podapalooza 2010 live on EAA Radio. We will be right back.
Hangar flying, meteorites, and aviation discussions. The hosts of your favorite aviation podcasts come together once again at Whitman Field Regional Airport for Podapalooza 2010 on EAA Radio.
All right, welcome back once again to Podapalooza 2010, live on EAA Radio and live in person down here at the Honda Forums Plaza, the main stage, Pavilion number 7. Real easy to see from the red tram line. We hope you'll come down and join us. We've had a couple people drifting in throughout the broadcast, and we hope to see some more. And again, we do have free bug spray. So, next thing I'd like to talk about real quick is one of the big issues that's been talked about recently as well as here is aviation fuel. We've probably all heard that the EPA would like us to get rid of the lead in 100 low lead. So there's been some seminars and such going on this week. And has anybody up here actually attended any of those? Hey, right here. All right. Where'd Tiffany go? Yeah.
I'm coming.
It's Sam again. I have attended pretty much the majority of the ones that EA has put on because I've had to record them. So I'm going to, little plug, they should be coming up on the website probably in the not too distant future, or available via EA. But I guess the biggest thing that they're saying is simply don't panic and trust us. We know what we're doing. So, I was going to say, I know that, saying trust the federal government is, pretty much an oxymoron, but it was, part of me kind of felt a little bit better because it sounded like they actually had stages and stepping through processes, and it wasn't going to be like, okay, next week we lose all of our 100 low lead. So that made me feel a little bit better because, one of the negatives of new media is everything can kind of create a buzz really quickly, and this is a serious issue. I'm not downplaying that, but it really caught on fire recently, and it's good to kind of see that, yes, that we've been, they're working on something, and it's not just going to be tomorrow.
I think that the trust us comment is about as succinct and accurate on this particular issue as I've heard. So thank you.
Now, as far as what's out there, I have heard of 3 proposed alternatives. One is the GAMI fuel, which they're calling that G100UL, correct?
UL, yeah. Or ULL or something like that.
And then Swift Fuels is also working on 100 low lead replacement, and Continental has been really harping on trying to get this 94 octane unleaded thing to go.
Yeah, non-starter, yeah.
Are there any others, or are those the 3 we have?
Not to my knowledge. One of the factors in this is the basic 100 low lead without the lead comes in around 97, 96 octane. And once you add back something that increases that octane and or provides some anti-knock properties to the fuel, you're back to at least 100, 101, something like that as a minimum. So this is not an intractable problem. This is not a chemistry problem. This is not a hydrocarbons problem. This is a political problem at its fundamental base. And that's what would scare me if I had a horse in this fight.
Yeah, I guess what my feeling is that that 94 unleaded has to not be what happens, mainly because a lot of our airplanes can burn that. But look around here. Continental wants us to go ahead and use that fuel so that they can sell us new engine parts and FADEC and such. But I don't think they're doing anything for all these Pratt and Whitney and
They're not. And I only have one word to share with you as to one reason that the 94 UL will not fly. And that one word is Lycoming. They won't sit still for that.
Excellent. Now, is there any sort of I have no sense of whether the Swift solution or the GAMI solution is better, or might they be interchangeable, or?
There's going to be more competition in this as it goes along, and we've just seen a bit of cooperation between 2 departments, 2 agencies that takes a whole lot of the urgency that we were worried about a few weeks ago and turns the heat down under it effectively. So, we're not going to get cut out of 100 low lead in the short term. They're going to find something that works. And something that bears remembering here is that this isn't the first time that the general aviation community has faced fuel problems. Once upon a time, before my time...
that was a long time ago.
When they ran out of whale oil?
Remember, I started flying hang gliders. I didn't worry about gas, except what it took to get the car to the top of the mountain. The fuel wasn't an issue. If the sun was out, we usually had enough to fly. But once upon a time, there was 80 octane, and there was 8991 octane, and 100 octane. And over time, the 80 and the 8991 range went away, and the 100 octane went away. And we got 100 low lead. because it was a common solution that would work in all of these different airplanes. It was more than the low compression engines needed, but it didn't hurt them to burn it. There was chemical compatibility. Can't believe I got that out. Chemical compatibility with the fuel system hardware, and that includes aircraft with bladders and those with wet wings and those with regular tanks, which was no small feat. Differences in fuel hoses and O-rings and all that, and that's worked out. There's a history of us surviving changes. This one's just probably going to be one a little more dramatic on our wallets at the end of the day and take a little longer to formulate, because what people seem to be after here is a solution that is not petroleum based or based on as little petroleum as possible and no bad additives. And that's going to be a trick, to find something that drops in and works with all those other things. But we're a pretty clever group. We're a pretty clever country. Now that we've eased the heat down under the political issue a little bit, all the powers that be can finally stop sweating that and polluting the gene pool in the gasoline with sweat. Have you ever gotten that out of a sump? And start focusing on actually addressing the chemical needs that need to be engineered to solve the problem.
But something that bothers me about this is something that Jeb touched on before. Is back when we did have 80, 87, and 90, 91, all that, whatever it was, the gene pool of airplanes was much larger. And so there was more, I think there was more motivation for the fuel companies to try to work something out. I'm not so completely convinced right now that it's going to be as smooth a transition as we'd like it to be, because they don't stand to make a whole lot of money out of keeping us happy.
That's one of the reasons why there needs to be more of us.
Yeah. Well, it's future pilot starts. There's a good story.
I have one question. What about how is the LSA Rotax engines going to play into this? They use MoGas.
Yeah. Technically, they primarily use MoGas. They can burn 100 low lead, but maintenance requirements are increased in a Rotax when you burn 100 low lead, which I find just extremely interesting. One of the primary goals, apparently, of this General Aviation Avgas Coalition is to come up with a single fuel that meets all of these needs. And I, on one level, I certainly support that. It obviously cannot be premium unleaded. It has to be something that works across the board in the turbocharged Navajos, the Cessna 150s, and everything in between. As far as the Rotax and Jabiru and Hertz and all the other ultralight and LSA engines, they're probably going to be okay with just about anything, as long as there's no lead in the fuel. They will probably be just fine. And I think ultimately the lead in 100 low lead is what increases the maintenance requirements on the Rotax engines.
Plus, yeah. I think that's why we're going to GAMI UL 99. Well, GAMI Swift UL 99. You're just going to combine them all.
I've known the guys at GAMI for a few years, and they've never steered me wrong. I tend to put a lot of faith and tend to listen to their opinions. So if they say they have a solution to this, at least a chemical solution, perhaps not a political one or a distribution solution, but if they say they have a chemical solution to this dilemma, I tend to sit up and take notice and believe them.
I want to jump back to something that you said, Dave, real quick. Is you said this was going to really hit us in our wallets. We're still looking at fuels that are going to be compatible with all the equipment on our airplanes, right? Are you thinking that this is going to be something that's going to have a very high cost per gallon, or?
We're such a tiny, tiny portion of the fuels market that it's hard to conceive to me at the moment that the solution will be as inexpensive, relatively speaking, as avgas is right now early on, because there's going to be some transition at work there, and the volumes are going to start out slow. But if we can get the volumes up and the feedstock production is low enough in cost, it's conceivable that whatever our replacement is could get back down in cost relative to what we're spending now. And, we all know here that you can go into FBOs where they're going to charge you $5.75 a gallon. And if you can't buy at least 40 or 50 or 100 gallons, they're going to want a $25 ramp fee. And then we know the little places like, what's the little town there in Florida, south of Lakeland? Wauchula, where you can go in on the weekend and, stuff 100 and some odd gallons in for just a little over $3. And there are lots of little places like that are pumping enough volume and have low enough costs that they can pass on a low cost for their supply.
Now, wait a minute. Did you say 100 gallons for $3?
$3 a gallon.
Oh. I was thinking maybe I could fly down there. That would
but if
make
you
it a real
mention
cheap
Tupper's
flight.
name, they'll only charge you $4.
All right, well, I notice as we're talking about this, I keep looking down at you guys because you've been through enough stuff in the aviation world and been through these transitions. And Jeb, you've done the political work, as you mentioned, that this is largely a political problem as well. So that's one of the things we appreciate about you guys is bringing that wealth of knowledge to us. So thank you very much.
Well, I want to bring up one point that actually has never come up in a podcast, but it's a thought that my co-owner, Roger, all the people at an FBO or on a field were complaining about how expensive the FBO's gas was, and then the city put a new pump on the field that undercut the FBO, and of course it's just a tank with a self-serve and no cost. And of course they go get the pilots all go there and hang out and drink coffee at the FBO with the couches. There's something to be said for paying a little premium. I mean, flying out here, it's a long flight. I shopped gas to go cheap, but I had to spend the night in a jet center with a couch, and it was really, really nice having a place that was open 24 hours, had a place for me to stay, and look, that's paid for with the cost of aviation fuel. So, I mean, we don't want to Walmart ourselves into nothing but self-serve, because then we lose courtesy cars, I hate to say it, fruit and donuts and all the stuff that comes with the FBOs that are more full service. So at least one tank every now and again should be to the higher dollar FBOs. And otherwise, we end up with the Walmart of FBOs.
That's exactly right. FBOs, for all their faults, and we've talked about them several times on our podcast, for all their faults, they're a necessary evil. I remember popping in to Tampa International several months ago, dropping Dave off after a sun and fun, and we go in. We got this big awning. It's about as high as this ceiling here, and we just taxi right in under the awning and get out and unload all his gear. And I think it's a $25 ramp fee or something like that because we didn't need any gas. That was painful, but yeah, it's we're getting services from them, and they're there to be in business and try to make a profit. So I don't begrudge that. What I do begrudge is some price gouging or no, you got to do it this way kind of thing, and that's a whole other topic, and we'll get around to that in a future episode.
Well, I was always big on supporting my home FBO. Never sweat there. En route, I'm going to look for the better deal. But then there are those odd times where it just pays to spend a little when you don't have to. And I'll give an example. An FBO that I used to visit with some regularity, flying about 220, 230 nautical from my home field to drop my wife off to catch a Southwest flight home. Short notice, really cheap way to do it. Cheaper for me to fly her up there than to put her on a walk-up ticket in Wichita. The FBO at the destination airport, the airline airport, 200 and some odd miles away, had a courtesy van. They would take her to the terminal, drop her off. When I came back, they would send the van, pick her up, bring her back. I always bought more gas there than it took me to get there, just out of appreciation for what they were providing, because they did that basically as part of their service package. They didn't charge a ramp fee like some FBOs will. I mean, Jeb's dropped me off at a couple of places in Florida where you couldn't taxi across the ramp, let me throw my bag out the door without them wanting $25. I want to walk through the FBO and get a cab. $25, please. $35 in one instance. So we didn't go back to that one, and we didn't feel ripped off, but we did feel a little gouged. And so you keep those kind of places in mind. There are options that don't have to do that, and I'll do that every time on the road.
Buy me dinner first, anyway. You know. A kiss.
Yeah, I feel the need to give a shout out to Millionaire in Albany, because in this discussion we've been talking about there's either the cheap city self-serve or there's the big FBO that has expensive fuel but has all these services and facilities. But I stopped in Albany, New York on a ferry flight a couple of years ago, and it's the nicest FBO facility I've ever been in. They had a room there that I could sleep on a bed for free, and they had the cheapest gas around. So if I'm anywhere near there again, I'll be back. So anyway, for now, let's go ahead and take another break, and we'll be back in a few minutes in Pavilion 7, the Honda Forums Plaza, and live on EAA Radio.
They may call it new media, but it's probably just your creep neighbor and his computer's in the basement. Welcome back to Podapalooza 2010 on EAA Radio.
And we're back. Podapalooza 2010 live on EAA Radio, and still here in the Honda Forums Plaza. If you want to come down and say hi to us, we'd love to see you. I guess one other political issue I kind of want to get into. We have a new FAA administrator, and I haven't been around all that long. I'd like to get some opinions from the audience and, of course, from the old guard here. But is it just me, or do we like this guy?
I remember Randy Babbitt when I was still flying for the airlines, and he was president of the Airline Pilots Association. So I think it's the first time, well, let me think. Marion didn't fly, I don't think. And who was the lady before her? Jane Garvey, right? We've had a couple of administrators who are pilots, but not any for a while. But I don't think we've had any for a long time that have been so completely immersed in the industry as Randy Babbitt is. But I think we were ready to like an administrator too, so it wouldn't have taken too much after Marion Blakey. But he, he is a good guy. He's a level-headed guy, but he's still the administrator. He's going to be forced to make decisions that many of us are not going to like.
Well, it seems to me, though, that he seems to be very good at deflecting some of the bad press and such, and that when you have certain senators who might be from New York screaming that if you want to be in the right seat of an airliner, you're going to need 5,000 hours or something, he seems to be real good at jumping in there with an alternate solution that is at least workable and a lot easier to swallow.
He may be the most diverse in background of anybody we've had in a long time. Don Engen, retired Navy admiral, worked in the GA business, worked for Piper, sailplane pilot, which is ultimately what killed him, unfortunately. Babbitt is a second-generation airline pilot. He led the Airline Pilots Association, the Airline Pilots Union. He's worked as a consultant. He's a GA pilot. He's worked in GA with companies trying to get into the business. Politically savvy, but not particularly political. Has an appreciation of the limitations of the power of the job he has, because he's been on the other side of the table in many, many instances over many, many years. And has a more realistic view, I think, of the businesses that he helps regulate. Airlines, charters, general aviation as a community, because of that second-generation background, that participation. We lacked that for a long time, and I think it did us damage. Under not exactly ideal circumstances, Babbitt seems to be off to a fairly reasonable start. And it seems pretty apparent that even where he can't necessarily influence something the way he would like to, he's sincerely and seriously listening to the problem that you got. And, that's a good first step.
And, I think it's no small challenge that you have a person that takes on an agency that within the federal government, I think they rated of the top 250 agencies, FAA was second from the bottom as the worst place imaginable to work. And having worked for them for 10 years, I kind of agree with that. But I mean, that's no small problem that he has trying to actually accomplish something when you have employees that are unfortunately not really well motivated sometimes.
Well, I think another thing, I do a lot of work with government agencies, mostly Department of Energy, and one of the things for any government agency is, it's really hard to get anything done when you don't have a budget. And FAA's gone how many years without, where it's just continuing resolution, I mean, how can you implement any major program without somebody actually telling you have funds to do it so you can even start a plan? With a continuing resolution, you don't have any authorization base to do anything other than just sort of spin your wheels and kind of continue plodding without any plan or progress. And one of the things, I was at the AOPA booth, and you fill out a survey, you get the free hat without a button. It's a good piece of booty. But the response, I looked at the results. You could look at what other people were taking and their results, and one of them was, one of the survey questions was, I will contact my politician and find out where they stand. That one got the lowest hit. And, look, the reality is we have to be politically active with respect to aviation in general. I mean, FAA is lame because no one's putting any heat on them. And, the GA community is about the only place it's going to come from.
Well, that's exactly right. I would never suggest that anyone become a single issue voter. But certainly this is an issue area that we should all factor into our voting and political contributions and our activities and things like that. Just one final comment, Mike. I also spent some time at the AOPA exhibit, the booth, tent, whatever you want to call it, and I was surprised that I never saw the phrase wine club anywhere in that display.
Never saw the phrase
wine club.
We talk about these issues where we need to be vocal and make our views made known. The biggest problem, and we talk about this every year and every time pilots get together, is our numbers are dwindling. We're becoming less and less relevant to the rest of the world. We're not championing as well as we could the things that aviation is doing for everyone. And I know there's a lot of organizations and a lot of people that are trying, but if our numbers are dwindling, the amount of work that's going into that is going to continue to dwindle as well.
All right, is there anybody in the audience who has any feelings here? Don't be shy. No feelings at all.
These are cool. Well, we do have a young example of a pilot, the Barefoot Bandit, of course.
Yikes. All right.
That went over like a pregnant high jumper. That didn't
you really got to watch what you say, because some people might just be turning on your radio, and that's a couple now.
Way too much totally naked.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break here. I think it'll be our last one, and we'll come back in just a few and finish up, and we'll see you then. Come on down to Pavilion 7, Honda Forums Plaza, or keep on. Yeah, definitely come quick, but we'll still be here and talk to people after we're done with the radio program, but we'll be right back.
The voices in your head are coming together and organizing. This cannot be good. It's Podapalooza on EAA Radio.
All right, we're back in the Honda Forums Plaza, Pavilion number 7. And we just mentioned a few minutes ago, we were talking about pilot starts and marketing and all that sort of stuff. Our numbers are dwindling here. and we need to do something about it. One thing that I read an article today about Kid Venture, which, I haven't been coming here long enough to know when that kind of thing started. Kind of thought it had been going on forever, but it seems like it's a relatively new thing. Steve, have you taken your son down to Kid Venture yet?
I spent the day today at Kid Venture. It's the Pioneer Airport, and there's stuff that's not just kids, but it's mostly about the kids. That's where the helicopter rides originate. We went down and got our 4th helicopter ride. Its mom has agreed that a Bell 47 is okay. As you may remember, last year I spent the day after the citation flight staying married for taking cola. But the EAA does a heck of a job. They've got an entire building that is devoted to earning your Kid Venture A&P. And yes. You go around. Cole made a really good propeller today. I was really proud because he sat there and removed a whole bunch of material, but only the material he was supposed to remove. Use the tool right. They teach kids how to rivet. They've got actual engines there that you pull stuff off and put it back on. And there are airplane climbs. There's both a couple that are in the hangar, and there are 3 or 4 actually really intriguing airframes out by the bus. But a great place for kids.
And I would second that. I have my son here, Steven, too, and helicopter ride, second one, it's a good thing. So.
All right, so one of our audience members here is, of course, Steve's son. So, Cole, what did you think? Did you enjoy Kid Venture?
Yes, Cole says he did really enjoy it.
What was your favorite part?
Hold on, stand by.
Stand by.
He's not sure, but he liked all of it.
All right. Who would have thought that Steve's kid would be any shy in front of a mic?
He can't get a word in edgewise. If you let
He's not shy. He just said he wouldn't do it unless he was getting paid.
There's a lawyer's son.
That's more like it.
I thought he was just waiting for me to give him the guitar.
He'll never be a podcaster then.
I was going to say, Cole, you're hired. Well, Rob, you hosted a forum earlier this week where you were talking about some of these things. Another problem that I think that we have is that most of the people who get into aviation businesses like FBOs and flight schools do it because they want to fly. And they're horrible, horrible business people in a lot of cases, unfortunately, and are not necessarily friendly to people who are not yet pilots. And you're a marketing person. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that and any kind of solutions that came up in your forum the other day?
I think the most immediate solution was that companies needed to hire us. We told them. I don't think there's anything more to say about that. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, and you know what? One of the strangest things is that still, when you look at the way companies run businesses, there are so many people that are in their businesses because they think aviation is really cool, and same with us. And there are times that we do some really stupid things, and someone will say, "Well, you're a pilot. What do you expect?" And we do make some stupid business decisions. But one thing we were talking about the other day was social media. We had a number of aircraft manufacturers at the forum and some small businesses, and these people are trying. They are trying, but I think that what we're doing is something new to them. We're all pretty light on our feet. You guys came over and said, "Hey, let's start a podcast." And, you found out it was tough, but you got in there and you did the work. And I still want to know how they convinced you to do all the editing. Can we get you to do the editing at Airplane Geeks?
They caught me at a weak moment.
Okay, but most companies are not that flexible. And so, for one thing, they don't really understand this that well, and the bureaucracies within them make using social media and this kind of get-together forum, very, very difficult for them. So I think that one thing we took away is that the industry is really going to start relying on organizations, on people, on groups like us that can make things happen, that can get in there and put a podcast together. And how long does it take you to do it? About 10 minutes?
It depends if Kent is on a roll or not.
But anyway, I think we're really going to start to show our worth here with these kinds of things, and I think we need to approach these companies and say, listen, you know what, we're happy to be able to help you sell your whatever, and ask for a little help in return. And a lot of these companies are open to that. They just haven't been approached yet.
Yeah, I think I obviously don't know the answer to this, or I'd probably be a lot more wealthy than I am. But
in aviation, we're sitting here drinking totally naked beers on a podcast. Okay, we're doing well.
Exactly. But aviation for everyone doesn't seem cool. It seems cool to us, and we have listeners and viewers that are listening because they think it's cool, because they like it. But we have an opportunity, and I think a responsibility as sort of the faces currently of new media in aviation, where we're going to be able to have an effect. I can tell you one thing. Like I said, I don't know all the answers, but I do know for sure that regular media, newspapers, and mainstream news programs and things like that are not going to make aviation seem cool to people, or make it even seem approachable to people who may have an inkling of interest. And I think it's up to individuals who have a passion about it, and for people who are taking those steps to kind of make new media this medium for allowing people to feel personally attached to other people and get the word out, and basically make other people realize how fun it is, how many amazing people are involved in aviation, and we cannot rely on the existing ways of getting the word out. And I truly believe that we have an opportunity and a responsibility to make this grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's we are our own worst enemy sometimes, because we assume that the people that are around us, we all get it. We all know how cool this is. And we don't spend much time talking to people that are not pilots. And so, when I'm approached at places and they go, oh, you fly, wow, that's pretty cool. I get a little crazy, because I'd rather go overboard and have them say that I'm kind of geeky, but probably works. But I'd rather have them say, boy, the guy's really into that, And I've had people actually decide to learn to fly because they felt like there was something really interesting. So it's going to be harder. This is not the 70s for those of us that grew up remembering when they were selling 18,000 single-engine airplanes in a year. I mean, it's not like that anymore. It's a lot. The work is a lot harder, but we're the ones to do it. I really believe that.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time the number of pilots doubled? It had to be, 50s, right?
Oh God, yeah.
If everybody who is a pilot today just got somebody within 5 years to become a pilot, get involved in aviation, become an A&P, whatever, we would double our numbers in 5 years. I mean, that's unimaginable.
Everybody's familiar with the EA Young Eagles program, but we were talking earlier this week that we need an Old Eagles program as well. The kids are coming up, but it may be 5 or 10 years before they can really have an impact and really participate fully in aviation.
I think the term that was discussed was bald eagles.
Bald eagles.
Okay, bald eagles.
No, I think you're exactly right.
Run that,
let me just tout this idea, this kind of wild-ass idea that I've got here. I talked about it on the podcast. I'll talk again while I've got a captive audience here. it seems to me, one of the things I've learned since we've been doing the podcast and talking to so many people and hearing from so many people on email and in the forums and whatnot, one thing I was kind of surprised to discover is that there's a huge population of people out there that already get it, that already have a passion for aviation, but they are unable for one reason or another to get the license. All right, they just think it's not accessible. They genuinely don't have the funds, whatever, and so. I'm all in favor of converting people, of going out and finding people and convincing them and showing them how cool aviation is. But first, there's a whole bunch of people that don't need any convincing. They already believe it. The Dave Allens of the world, okay. The problem is that we've got this $6,000 speed bump, all right, between them and aviation, all right. And I believe that one way to make the situation better is free flying lessons, all right? And I'm really kind of mostly serious about this, all right? I think that the aviation industry, all right, particularly the deep pockets like the Cessnas and the Pipers and the Beechcrafts and the, all of these organizations should be contributing into, I don't know exactly how the mechanics would work, but some way they need to contribute into a fund so that anybody who has a good faith desire to learn how to fly can get a sport pilot license basically for free, okay? And I think we'd gather up all those Dave Allens of the world, all right, and that we could double the pilot population in 10 years, all right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the deep pocket aviation industry people would actually make money on it, all right? Because the fact of the matter is that every new pilot is a new customer, all right?
Yeah.
And they would make more money.
You got to remember too, though, that that's out there. You see it everywhere. I don't know what article I was reading. It might have been in one of those magazines that they're giving out each day. But I was reading today, I think Wednesday's magazine they sent out, or newspaper, that some guy did. He got a free ticket to fly and get his license in an LSA. That is out there. The problem is people don't know that. And the bigger problem is that maybe people don't want to take that step to do it. So I don't know a solution. I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate.
I would also add, Tiffany, that those companies that you mentioned, you called them deep pockets. I would call them formerly deep pockets, right? So they are going to benefit, obviously, from new starts and people who are becoming pilots. But I think all of us will as well. And I think one of the ways that we can do exactly what you're doing is find the organizations that are helping people do this already.
And by the way, Sporties, big kudos to Sporties.
No doubt.
They're sort of on track to do this kind of stuff. They kind of have a sense of this, and they're taking steps, and I give them a lot of credit. They're really the first of the, and deep pockets is maybe a bad term, but the big aviation companies,
the ones who stand to benefit the
exactly,
most.
So I give Sporties a lot of credit. That's why I didn't mention Sporties, because I think they're already on this track, right? Yeah. But the others need to buy into this as well.
Yeah, and there's nonprofit organizations as well that are working toward that same goal and making sure that aviation continues to grow. And if we don't know about them, who possibly would? And I think we have an opportunity to support those groups, find out who they are. We, as sort of spokespeople for new media in aviation, we should be out there touting them as well, finding them, hearing from our listeners, and making them known so that we can support them. We can help with the funding for these new starts, and it's going to benefit all of us as well as the deep pockets, as you said.
Because there's really
I'm looking right now for that funding.
But it's
seriously, I've jumped through this hoop 2 years ago. Went through the whole LSA thing. I'm in that group of easy converts, and it's hard. It's so hard to get over that hump that I think if you could figure a way, and there's a lot of scholarships, different areas, but if you can figure a way to systematically kind of drive down the cost. The other piece I would talk about is the community and welcoming in some of those people that are at the fence but aren't quite there. It's hard to get in and stay in. And some people get it. I think Sporties gets it. My son's been online in Sporties free classes and is getting exposed to that, and that is so cool. But that community at the airport isn't there. That's part of what I think new media does, is it creates that community. I have people, I re-soloed not too long ago. I had people on Twitter following me, much like people were following Jeb here. And I get off and I get this list of people, hey, way to go. Oh, did you hear him on live ATC and all that stuff? That's another big piece that we need is that community, and I think new media can do that. I think that's
Here.
Okay, maybe new media can also get free airplanes for us. So I think we need to free airplane, free pilot's license, free gas, and I think that's our. We should all write our congressman and ask for that. One of the three.
I agree with what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. But I just want to know, and I use this term, I blame you guys. I was one of those guys. I wanted to fly my whole life, and that's like, how do you justify the expense? How do you do that? I'm 47 years old, right? And I just passed my check ride, and listening to podcasts, because a buddy of mine said, you should listen to podcasts. I'm like, well, I like aviation. Start listening to aviation podcasts. That's what pushed me over the fence. That's where I got to the point where it's like, you can't justify the expense. If you want to do it, you come up with a way. I mean, I realize not everybody can afford it, and it was hard for me. It took me a year and a half to get to this point, and part of that was money. But at the same time, people like you, all of you guys, you influence us, people like me, to take that leap and to do it. So new media is pushing this, Twitter, podcasts. So while I agree there should be cheaper ways for people to get into it, at the same time, I think you guys are all contributing to this. You're all bringing new pilots in.
And something everybody can do that we all love to do anyway, and I do this a lot, is I take people flying. We all love to go flying. Don't go flying by yourself. Go grab somebody who you think might have an interest and take them flying.
I propose the Podapalooza pledge. Right?
I will take. I want to hear it first before I raise my hand.
I want to hear it. I will take people flying on a regular basis. No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Really.
I will do it. I will add to that.
You guys too.
I'll add to that. Don't ask them to share expenses.
No.
There's another component that I'd like to mention, being the one of the two women kind of represented up here today. And I think that part of the issue that I always hear, that Mike always gets comments on, is, oh my gosh, your wife is so enthusiastic, she's so supportive, she's so into it. And I had the chance when he was just starting his lessons, and it never once did aviation really come into my perspective, other than I liked traveling around the world in a big old jetliner, But when he told me this was a lifelong dream of his, I wanted to support that. I wanted to be part of it as much as I could. And when his instructor said, hey, do you want to come up with us? I said, yeah, let's do it. But I think part of what will help is that some, I think we need to encourage women to become pilots, but we also need to bring, the spouses in, because some pilots are kind of forced to choose between following that dream and keeping their relationship with the one that they love. And if you can bring the women in and get the women passionate and excited, get them maybe over there, if they don't want to become pilots, but maybe they see it's a great, photography. This time with my husband, it's worth that money to do it. If there's some way that we can build that community of supportive, female spouses and also male spouses for those female pilots that might get some, pushback. I think that would really help quite a bit as well.
All right, we're going to probably continue this conversation here live in the number 7 pavilion, the main pavilion here in the Honda Forums Plaza. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time on the radio, and of course, one of our traditions with Podapalooza is that we have some very creative people in our midst, and one of my favorites, of course, is Steve. He does some really great music, so we're going to have Steve pick us out. For those of you who can only join us on the radio, thank you for listening. For those of you who are able to come and join us in the forums, please come on down to Forum 7, give us your ideas. And for now, here is Steve Tupper.
I like it at air shows when they have a VFR arrival window. Alone 172 is calling in the name of finals. So I like to hold my hat over my heart while that 172 touches down, and I know you do the same thing. So I listen to the radio when I hear the engines roar, rolling down the shoreline, just like they did before. It's the last good thing on the radio, on the air. Yeah, let the music play. It's the last good thing.
great shows at the Aviation Podcast Network.
TheVoicesInYourHead.com.